The palace halls were quiet, too quiet for such an important day. Lissa stood near the window, her golden eyes filled with fear. Outside, alien guards marched across the stone paths. The air smelled like dust and pressure, the kind that came before something big. She didn't want this, not at all. A human was coming, her mate, they said, chosen by the High Council to join their noble bloodline. A peace treaty between her people and the humans depended on this union. But Lissa didn't believe in peace built on fear, and that's all she felt when she heard the word human. Her tutor once said humans were wild animals in uniforms, that they laughed while they killed and smiled while they burned worlds. And now one of them was coming for her hand. A mating ceremony was being prepared in the royal court. Her dress was already laid out, shimmering with crystals and chains. But all she wanted was to rip it apart and run far away. "I won't do it," she whispered to herself. She looked at the wall panel near her bed, searching for the map of secret tunnels. Her plan was simple: escape the palace, disappear into the lower cities, let them marry someone else to that brutal human. Not her. She packed a small bag with food tablets and a cloak. Her hands trembled as she moved, her heart beating faster every second. She heard a voice behind her. It was her mother, Queen Villana. "You will not run, daughter," the queen said calmly. Lissa froze, caught like prey under a hunter's stare. "I don't want him," Lissa said, trying to stay strong. "He's a human. He's dangerous." Queen Villana sighed and walked closer, her long robes whispering across the floor. "You think I don't fear him too?" she said quietly. "But fear is what holds the stars apart. And sometimes it must be challenged." Lissa shook her head. "That's not fair. I'm not a weapon or a bridge. I'm a person." The queen placed a hand on her shoulder, gentle but firm. "This isn't just about you, child. It's about the future of both worlds." Tears built up in Lissa's eyes, but she refused to let them fall. "You said he's a soldier," Lissa said. "He's killed before." "Yes," the queen replied, "but so have our people." Silence filled the room, heavy like stone. Queen Villana finally said, "You will meet him in 3 days. If you still wish to refuse after that, you may, but you must meet him." Then she left, leaving Lissa staring at the door. 3 days. That was all the time she had. 3 days to decide if this human was really the monster everyone said he was. The next morning, Lissa wandered the gardens alone. She saw younglings, playing, laughing, unaware of the things adults feared. She thought of the stories told at night, of humans with fire in their eyes and blood on their hands. But she also remembered something her old nurse once whispered. Stories change when you meet the person behind them. Still, Lissa didn't feel ready to meet the man meant to be her mate. How could she trust someone built for war? Later that night, while everyone slept, she sneaked to the royal library. She searched the human archives, pictures, reports, footage. She found one image of him, Jace, the chosen human. Tall, strong, his eyes dark like night, but not angry. Just tired. She zoomed into the image, studying his face. He didn't smile, but he didn't frown either. Was this the face of a killer, or someone who had seen too much? Lissa didn't know what to think anymore. She closed the screen and leaned back, heart still confused. Outside, a storm began to rise, soft thunder echoing through the palace walls. In her mind, a storm was building too. The next morning came too fast. Royal servants moved through the halls, cleaning, decorating, whispering. Lissa sat quietly during breakfast, eating nothing. Every sound felt sharp. Every word about the human stung her ears. As she stood to leave, a servant ran in, panting. "They've arrived," he said breathlessly. Everyone stood still. Lissa's chest tightened, her breath caught. She ran to her tower window and looked toward the sky. A silver ship descended. Glowing under the twin suns, her heart pounded. Her fingers curled into fists. Somewhere inside that ship was the human they called Jace. Her future, her fear, her challenge, he was here. And there was no turning back now, asterisk. The twin suns rose slowly over the palace as thick clouds moved aside, casting a strange golden light across the land. People gathered near the Grand Plaza, their faces tense, their whispers louder than usual. A large shadow fell over them as the human ship descended. Quiet and smooth like a bird of prey preparing to land, Lissa didn't want to watch, but her feet had brought her to the highest balcony. Anyway, her heart thumped loudly in her chest. It felt like something heavy sat on her shoulders. Even the wind was silent, waiting, her eyes fixed on the giant metal shape slowing in the sky. Then the ship touched the landing pad, and all motion stopped. Guards stood tall, nobles waited in perfect lines, and yet everyone seemed nervous, as if expecting something violent to come through that door. The ramp lowered slowly, hissing steam surrounding the entrance like a warning. Lissa leaned forward, eyes sharp, breath shallow. She wanted to see the face of the one who had turned her future upside down. A single figure stepped forward, tall, broad-shouldered, covered in dark armor with no weapons drawn. His head turned left, then right, scanning the area calmly. Not with fear, not even pride, but awareness. He took slow steps, each one controlled and steady. His face became clear now, skin pale, eyes dark and unreadable, lips firm, but not cruel. Not smiling either, Lissa blinked, surprised, she expected a monster, a beast, but this was a man, a soldier maybe, but not the raging brute the stories warned about. There was no fire in his eyes, no bloodthirst, only silence. Then something unexpected happened. A young alien child standing near the crowd tripped and fell onto the hard stone, crying out as his small body hit the ground. No one moved at first, not even the guards, too afraid to break the royal formation, but the human did. He stepped out of line without hesitation, walked straight to the child and crouched down. His large hand gently helped the boy up. Dusting off his small cloak, he whispered something no one could hear, but the child stopped crying. The fear vanished from his face. The alien crowd gasped in disbelief. Nobles whispered. A few elders narrowed their eyes, unsure what they were seeing. Lissa stood frozen, her hands gripping the edge of the balcony tightly. What was he doing? Why was he so gentle? She had no answer. But her heart beat faster for a different reason now. Not fear, but confusion. Deep confusion that made her chest feel strange. He wasn't supposed to care. He wasn't supposed to help anyone. He was supposed to be cold, proud, distant. But here he was, helping a child, as if it was the most natural thing in the world. Lissa turned from the balcony and rushed down the spiral staircase, ignoring the guards who tried to stop her. She had to see him up close. She had to understand what kind of man had been chosen for her. She slipped through the servant halls and reached the edge of the garden. Just as the human was being led by royal guards into the palace halls, his steps never hurried, his posture relaxed yet alert. He looked around, taking in the details like a hunter watching for signs, but not with the hunger of a killer, more like someone who had learned to survive. She hid behind a marble pillar as he passed. Only a few feet away, she could hear the sound of his boots, the rhythm of his breath. She leaned forward slightly, trying to get a better look, and then, without turning his head, he spoke. "I know you're there," he said softly, his voice calm like still water. "You don't have to hide." Lissa froze in place, shocked. He hadn't even looked. How did he know? She stepped back slowly, her heart racing, but he didn't follow, didn't chase, didn't even glance back. He just walked on, surrounded by guards, but somehow fully in control. Lissa stood there for a long time, unable to move, her chest tight with questions she couldn't answer. Maybe he was trained to act nice. Maybe this was a trick, but it didn't feel like one. That night in her room, she replayed every second in her mind. The way he moved, the way he helped the child, and the way he spoke without fear or force. It was all wrong, and that made her more afraid than before. Because she was no longer scared of the monster. She was scared of what might happen if he wasn't a monster at all, and deep inside, She knew this human was not what they had told her. He was something else entirely. Something she couldn't run from, not anymore. And the pillar. She hadn't made a sound, hadn't moved. It was like he felt her presence, not through sight, but through something deeper. The stories never mentioned that. The next day, Lissa stayed hidden from the public ceremonies. Avoiding the long greetings and official speeches meant to welcome the human soldier. She wasn't ready to face him again, not yet. Her mind was full of cracks, filled with doubt, filled with things that didn't fit. She walked the inner garden, paths alone, letting her fingers run through the soft white flowers that only bloomed during times of peace. Strange how these flowers only grew now, when her whole world felt like a storm. Suddenly, a voice reached her, not loud, but close. "I thought I might find you here." She turned sharply, eyes wide, but no one stood in front of her. She turned again. And there he was, Jace, the human, standing by the stone archway, hands behind his back. "How did you get in here?" she asked, her voice stiff. "There's no guard," he said, shrugging gently. "And I asked nicely." She stared at him, confused, unsure if he was mocking her, but there was no smile on his face. No smug grin, just honesty, plain and strange honesty. She stood still, not sure what to say. Her training told her to be proud, to be sharp, to never let the enemy see her heart. "You don't belong here," she said. "I know," he replied without pause, "but I'm trying." That stopped her, like a hand grabbing her thoughts midair. He wasn't pretending to be perfect. He wasn't acting like a conqueror. He was just being real. "I didn't ask for this match," she said, looking away. "I didn't either," he replied. "But here we are." She looked at him again, his face still calm, his voice even, like someone walking through fog without fear. "I heard stories," she said, voice low, "that humans are violent, dangerous, proud." "Some are," he said. "So are some of yours." She had no answer for that, just silence, long and uncomfortable. "I don't expect you to like me," he said, "but I won't hurt you." She studied his eyes, trying to find the lie, trying to find the beast hiding under the skin. But all she saw was tired truth, like someone who had already fought too many battles and didn't want another one. "Why are you here then?" she asked. "Because maybe peace needs a face," he replied. "Maybe someone has to go first." That didn't sound like a soldier. That sounded like something else, something she wasn't prepared for. Before she could speak again, a guard rushed in from the side gate, bowing quickly. "Princess, the elders summon you," he said. The human must also attend. Lissa's heart sank. She knew what this was, a test. A formal meeting where the elders would judge their connection, their body language, their eyes, their every breath. She followed silently, Jace walking beside her, not speaking, not forcing conversation, just present. Inside the elder hall, the room was shaped like a half moon, with 7 old ones sitting on high chairs, their faces stern, unreadable. "You will answer 1 question each," said the lead elder, "and speak truth only." Jace was asked first. "What do you desire most?" He paused, looked up at the glowing ceiling, then said, "Peace, real peace, not forced by fear." Lissa was asked next, "What do you fear most?" Her lips parted, but no words came. Her heart pounded, her mouth dry. She looked at Jace, and for some reason, the answer changed inside her mind. "Not knowing what's real," she finally said. The elders looked at one another, but gave no sign of judgment. "You may leave," they said. Outside the hall, Jace spoke softly. "Thank you for being honest." Lissa looked at him with new eyes. "I still don't trust you," she said. "I wouldn't either," he replied. "But I'll keep showing you who I am." And with that, he walked away into the shadows, leaving her standing there, confused, shaken, but deeply, painfully curious. Something was happening. Something she didn't understand, and for the first time she wanted to. The music in the grand hall played softly, like a whisper trying not to wake the stars. Lights shimmered across the marble floor, and golden curtains danced with the wind. As nobles gathered in silence, tonight was not about speeches or politics. Tonight was about watching two strangers pretend to belong together. Lissa stood at the edge of the room, dressed in a silver gown that clung to her like ice, her face calm. But inside, a storm waited to break loose. She didn't want to be here, not under these lights, not surrounded by eyes waiting to see her. Crack, and certainly not sitting beside him, Jace entered the hall alone. Wearing a simple black suit given to him by the court, no medals, no weapons, just a man tall and quiet, as if he didn't care what people thought, but Lissa could tell he noticed everything. He walked with ease, yet didn't smile, and when he approached her table, the room tensed, every noble leaned slightly forward, waiting to see if the alien princess would flinch when the brutal human sat beside her. She didn't, but only because she told her body not to. She stared straight ahead, jaw tight, hands under the table gripping the cloth like it might keep her grounded. Jace sat down slowly, without a word, without looking at her, and then, after a few breaths, he said something that no one expected. "You don't have to smile," he said softly. "Just breathe." Lissa turned to him, surprised, confused, and for a moment, almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was. Too strange, too human, and too simple. He wasn't pretending to charm her, wasn't trying to control the moment. He was just ... being real again. They sat together like two ghosts in the middle of a room full of polished statues. The food came in silver plates, but neither touched it. Words hung heavy between them, but they were not bitter. A noble from Lissa's side approached. With a glass of alien wine, smirking in that way only the proud do, he raised it toward Jace and said loud enough for all to hear, "Do humans drink before or after war?" Jace looked up, slow and calm, and replied, "Only after winning." The noble's smirk vanished, and he stepped back quickly. A few chuckles rippled through the crowd. Lissa blinked, stunned. She expected fire or arrogance, but he delivered strength like a quiet blade, sharp without showing blood. After that moment, no one dared approach them again. The music played on, and silence returned to their table, but it wasn't cold anymore. It was curious. Lissa finally picked up a small piece of fruit, chewing slowly, her heart no longer racing. "I don't understand you," she whispered. "You're not supposed to." Jace replied gently, "Not yet." Later that night, after the banquet ended and the nobles left in confusion, Lissa walked the empty halls alone. Her steps slow, her mind loud. She felt like her world had flipped quietly, without her permission, in her room. A folded note waited on her bed, no signature, no seal, just simple handwriting that said, "He's not what he seems. Be careful, princess." She held the note with shaking hands, unsure if it was a warning or a lie. Then she looked out the window and saw Jace walking alone in the moonlit garden below. He paused near the edge of the fountain, leaned forward, and touched the water gently, like it was something precious, something real. Lissa didn't know what to believe anymore. The human wasn't acting like a warrior, or a conqueror, or a proud male showing off. He acted like someone who didn't need to prove anything. And somehow that made him more dangerous than any story ever told. She turned away from the window, heart pulled in two directions. He was here, inside her world, inside her mind, and maybe, just maybe, inside her heart. And the next, a flash of metal cut the air. A figure jumped from the tall trees, masked and fast. A blade aimed straight at her heart. Lissa froze. The world seemed to stop breathing. Her feet wouldn't move, her voice wouldn't rise. All she saw was death flying toward her. But Jace moved before anyone else. His arm shot forward, grabbing her and turning her body behind his own. The blade struck his side, sharp and deep. Blood splashed across the grass, but he didn't fall. Instead, he twisted, caught the attacker's wrist mid-air, and slammed them to the ground like a hammer hitting stone. Guards swarmed in late, too late, but Jace had already handled it. His knee pressed into the attacker's chest. The blade now in his own hand, Lissa stood there, staring at him, her mouth open, her heart racing. He was bleeding badly, but he wasn't groaning or showing pain. He looked back at her, his eyes steady, his voice low. "Are you hurt?" She shook her head slowly, still unable to speak. Her voice caught in her throat like a bird in a cage. He stood, then staggered slightly, and she rushed forward without thinking, catching his arm, blood soaking into her hands. "Why?" she whispered. "Why would you protect me like that?" He blinked slowly, like he didn't understand the question. "Because you were in danger," he said simply. "What else was I supposed to do?" He didn't say it like a hero or someone who wanted praise. He said it like it was obvious, like it was the only thing that made sense. The palace healers came running, lifting him onto a hover stretcher. Lissa walked beside him all the way to the medical wing, not caring who watched, not caring what it looked like. Her fingers stayed around his wrist, as if letting go would make it worse. Hours passed, cold and silent. She sat outside the healing chamber, staring at the red lights flashing above the door, her mind repeating the moment again and again. The blade, the blood, his voice asking if she was hurt. No one had ever put their body between hers and danger before. Not even her own people. Not like that. Not without thinking. When the doors opened, a nurse stepped out and said, "He'll live, but he needs rest." Lissa walked inside slowly, her steps quiet as snow. Jace lay on the soft bed, his eyes half open, one side wrapped in clean bandages, machines blinking softly near his head. "You again," he said weakly. "I never left," she replied. Taking a seat beside him, they sat in silence, the kind that didn't feel heavy anymore, just real. He turned his head slightly toward her and said, "You don't have to stay." "I know," she whispered, "but I want to." He closed his eyes, not because he didn't want to talk, but because his body was tired. Even now, he wasn't showing weakness, just peace. Lissa stayed by his side all night, watching him breathe, listening to the quiet rhythm of his heart monitor. Her thoughts were no longer sharp blades, they were soft, slow waves of confusion, wonder, and something warmer. Before dawn, he opened his eyes again, just for a moment, and said, "I'm glad you're safe." Her throat tightened, and all she could say was, "So am I," somewhere outside the palace. Guards were still searching for clues, still trying to understand who sent the assassin and why. But Lissa no longer cared about politics or war rumors. She only cared about the human in front of her, who bled to keep her breathing. He wasn't a story anymore. He wasn't a warning. He was real. And she wasn't afraid of him now. She was afraid of what she might feel if he kept looking at her that way. Like she was worth saving. Asterisk. They gave her a choice, but it didn't feel like one. Not really. Not when the whole council chamber stared at her like a problem to be solved. Like a string waiting to be cut. Lissa stood in the middle of the circle, her voice quiet, her hands behind her back, hiding the way her fingers trembled. Across from her, the elders sat high in their chairs, dressed in dark robes, their eyes cold like stone. One of them finally spoke. "Princess Lissa, after observing your interactions with the human, and the attack which nearly took your life, we give you this choice: formally end this match, or continue it with your consent." The words echoed in the hall like thunder rolling in a dry canyon. "You will face no punishment if you walk away," said another. "But if you stay bound to him," said a third, "you take full responsibility for what follows." Lissa didn't answer, not at first. Her eyes glanced to the side of the chamber, where Jace stood quietly, his wounds still healing. His arms folded behind him, not demanding, not begging, just waiting, like he always did. He hadn't spoken since waking up fully yesterday, hadn't tried to convince her of anything. He just looked at her once and said, "Whatever you choose. I'll accept it." That was the hardest part. He made it easy to walk away and harder to stay. The silence dragged on, nobles shifting uncomfortably. A few of them smirking already, expecting her to say no, to declare the match broken, to return to tradition. But Lissa wasn't thinking about politics or old customs anymore. She was thinking about blood on the grass, about his hand reaching for hers even when he was falling, about how he never once asked her to trust him. And somehow, that made her want to. She finally spoke, her voice soft but clear. "I don't know what's ahead," she said, "but I don't want to find out." Without him, the chamber erupted in noise. Some gasped, others shouted. A few elders even stood up in protest. "She's blinded by emotion." One cried, "This will bring dishonor," another yelled. But Lissa didn't flinch. She turned to Jace, and he nodded once, no smile, no surprise, just quiet understanding. Like he already knew she would choose this path. The elders tried to delay the process, to push new laws, to whisper warnings of risk and regret. But none of it mattered now. The words fell like dry leaves, making no sound in the storm that had already passed that night. She sat beside Jace on a balcony, far from the palace noise. The stars above looked close enough to touch, the sky clear for the first time in days. They didn't speak for a while. "Just watch the stars and listen to the soft wind. You didn't have to choose me," he said quietly. "I didn't," she replied. "I chose something I didn't understand." "Still don't?" he asked. "Not fully," she said. "But I trust it." Jace looked at her with those same dark eyes, not glowing, not sharp, just honest. "I'm not perfect," he said. "I've seen war, done things I don't talk about. I don't need perfect." She replied, "I need real." He leaned back in the chair, finally relaxing. "You're not what I expected either." He added, "What did you expect?" she asked. "A spoiled alien girl who hated humans." "Well," she said, smirking a little, "you got half right." They both laughed quietly, like old friends who had seen too much and knew better than to take peace for granted. In that moment, the bond between them wasn't just duty or treaty or bloodline. It was something human and something alien all at once, but deep down. They both knew peace didn't last long in a world like this. Somewhere in the shadows, something moved. Something that didn't want this match to succeed. Someone who had waited too long for the moment to strike. The first explosion shattered the quiet before sunrise. It came from the east wall of the palace, where no guard ever expected danger. Lissa woke to the sound of alarms, her body moving before her thoughts could catch up. She grabbed her cloak, her heart pounding with only one thought: Jace. She ran down the corridor barefoot, past panicking servants and confused soldiers. Smoke filled the air, and the floor shook under her feet. A second blast tore through the sky, lighting the clouds. With orange fire, she turned a corner and nearly slammed into two guards. "Where is he?" she shouted. "The human?" One replied, stunned. "He went toward the breach, alone." Of course he did. Lissa didn't think, didn't plan, she just ran, cloak flying behind her like broken wings. She burst into the outer courtyard and saw him standing near the edge of the broken wall, his arms still bandaged, holding a plasma rifle that wasn't even charged. Enemy raiders had come, faction loyalists who hated the human match, who believed her bond with Jace was a betrayal of their blood. They came armed, hungry for war. Jace stood between them and the heart of the palace. No shield, no backup, just him. Lissa ran to his side and grabbed a fallen guard's weapon. "You're not doing this alone," she said. He looked at her, sweat on his brow, but his voice steady. "You should be inside. I should be wherever you are." She replied. The attackers charged, shouting war cries in ancient tongue. Lissa fired first, dropping two before they reached the steps. Jace took the flank, shooting low and fast. Not a single wasted shot. The courtyard turned into chaos. But together they moved like water on stone. She covered his blind spots. He pulled her back when blasts got too close. For the first time, they weren't two strangers. They were a unit. But then one of the attackers broke through the smoke, too close, too fast. Blade raised high, aimed right for Jace's neck. Lissa screamed, but her feet were quicker than her voice. She threw herself between them, took the hit across her shoulder. Pain burning like fire, she fell to the ground, blood staining her sleeve. Jace didn't shout, didn't panic. He ended the attacker with one sharp strike, then dropped beside her, holding her tightly. "Why did you do that?" he asked, voice cracking. "Because you did it for me," she whispered. "Because you matter to me." He carried her inside when the enemy finally retreated. When the guards arrived too late again, they found him cradling her in the hallway, whispering her name over and over. She lived. The wound was deep, but not fatal. He refused to leave her side, even when ordered to rest, even when the healers told him it was over. And when she opened her eyes again the next morning, she saw him there, asleep beside her bed, his hand still holding hers. "I thought you were a brute," she said softly. He opened one eye. "I thought you were just a spoiled alien girl." They both smiled, tired and broken, but together, later that week, they stood before the council again, not to ask permission, but to declare their bond with their own voices, not for duty, not for peace, but for choice. And when Lissa looked at Jace during the vow, she no longer saw a threat or a stranger. She saw the one who bled for her, fought beside her, and chose her.